What's going on, everybody? I hope you're all well, and welcome back to Dragon Age Origins. Now, as always, this is not going to be a main episode of the Let's Play. This is going to be a Codex lore reading episode. If that's not something you're interested in, then go ahead and click away now and wait for another main episode of the Let's Play. If that is something you're interested in, then let's get nerdy and dive into the Codex. We should have a pretty large amount of things to look at here. We've basically haven't touched any of the Codexes since we arrived in Orzammar, so we've got plenty to sink our teeth into. I suppose we'll start down here in quest related. We have the key to the city. While your concerns have merit, the assembly has made itself clear. Space within the tag is at a premium, but the intended function of the hall merits the additional resources committed. The statues of the paragons must be the core of the Hall of Heroes. There is no other placement that so benefits dwarven interests. It is the first glimpse that the surface ambassadors have of Orzammar, an introduction not just to our living ancestors, but also to the stone from which we were born. They must see it shaped before they can understand the complexity of its raw form. The hall must also serve a second purpose, as a last sight for departing brethren. Those who choose to leave must do so with the heavy gaze of their ancestors at their backs. It is a reminder of duty and of consequence. We will promote all manner of trade, but also reinforce that those who leave for too long will return as strangers to the stone. From a report of the Assembly Zoning Commission. Pursuant to Order 5.1a, no dwarf of indeterminate caste may conduct business in the Commons. This was subsequently clarified by the Assembly to mean that the owning and operating of stalls or kiosks is limited to those of identified and approved house names with traceable ancestor lineage of at least 3 generations. Exceptions include individual purchases of goods or services from established stores or kiosks, provided the funds are presented at the opening of the transaction at the discretion of the stall or kiosk owner. I'm sure you understand the need to maintain strict quality control over all goods and services that flow through Orzammar, especially when we are making a concerted effort to encourage outside investment. The standards of Dusttown and that of the common brand are simply not sufficient. Your trade permit is hereby denied. From a judgment of the Assembly Trade Council regarding Midal's reclaimed wares. The restriction of your authority is a temporary consideration, and not a verdict imposed lightly. The Assembly feels that efforts to maintain the sanctity of the proving have faltered. This is a gentleman's contest where future generals and respected veterans display their skills. It is intended to be inspiring and remind the lower castes why their leaders lead. We acknowledge the usefulness of a forum for the settling of honor debts, and concede that the occasional defeat of a noble can serve as appeasement, provided it is by a peer and the contest is properly adjudicated. Extending this practice to the lower castes could prove a dangerous and barbaric precedent. We have already seen the disruption that an unauthorized fighter can cause, the recent brand incident, and a similar incidents should be discouraged with all possible prejudice. From an Assembly writ of censure regarding management of the provings. It is agreed that no rules of procedure were explicitly broken, but a 5-day filibuster is nonetheless worthy of censure. Division of House Gorosmo property was deliberated for a full session, and forfeiture of the southern estate deemed a necessity. Since the birth of young Cade necessitates his elevation to noble status, and it is unthinkable for a noble's family to live in the slums, it is the responsibility of the father to accommodate the placement of his family. It is not possible to simply generate new space in the Diamond Quarter without compromising Tig's structural integrity. Lord Dace's comment that, if Lord Gorosmo didn't want a new heir, he shouldn't have slummed for a concubine, was indeed inappropriate, but the proper procedure for resolution through proving was followed. Both parties agreed to accept his retraction, and that matter is considered separate and closed. The decision of the Assembly regarding the placement of the Duncoat clan stands. From a writ of the Assembly Zoning Council regarding the placement of the Duncoat clan. Your efforts have been exemplary, but these self-proclaimed cartels must defer to the Assembly and restore order. Exclusion from caste and society is no excuse. Perhaps suggest that it would be a simple matter to march on the quarter, or simpler still to withdraw infrastructure support. A tunnel breach would be most unfortunate, but current policy direction prohibits any deals that would legitimize cartel operations. Downward pressure on certain elements of our society has proven useful in shoring up the economy with an excess of affordable labor. It also encourages enlistment in the Legion of the Dead, the one accepted path to partial redemption, and a vital force on our weakening front lines. This model suffers when criminals create their own hierarchies with alternative methods of social advancement. Every stone has a face that can't be carved, a side that must be earthward. We need their so-called Dust Town, but it would be inadvisable to include that in your negotiations. We have the utmost faith in you, Captain. The rest is obscured by bloodstains from a confidential assembly directive regarding proliferation of cartels. Caged in stone, the inscription is old and worn, overlooked by most as a carving detail. The beast is foreign, but the need is familiar. Home and hearth suffer beneath strength and strangeness. These new kin of this Ferelden are better as friends than strangers, so we resist on their behalf and work with their users to bind with the stone. They no longer fear their skies, and we further our trade above. Lured from above, cornered and corralled, 3 standing in position, a 4th signals the throne. Stasis for the beast, so long as a king holds the throne, so long as a king wills it held. Inscription, circa 590 exalted. A letter from King Endrin. My lord Harrowmont, my guilt weighs heavily on me, and I know now that I was a fool. Only a fool would cut out his own heart and burn it for the sake of appearances. I allowed the assembly to send my child to exile and death because I feared an inquiry into Trion's murder would taint our house with scandal. You have been my rock and my shield these long months, and for that, I thank you. But I must ask for one more thing. I wish to discover if my child survived. Even the smallest trace will set my mind at ease. Send your men, your scouts, anyone who will go. Bhelen thinks I am mad. He says that if word spreads of my wish, our house will be undone. He doesn't know that Aeudcan is already lost. I destroyed us when I sacrificed what was most precious. Please, Pyral, help me. I come to you not as a king, but as a father. A note from the late King Endrin Aeducan. The Casteless. The caste system in Orzammar includes many groups of privilege, the nobility and the warriors above all others, but to a lesser degree the merchants and the smiths and the miners. Tradition establishes a clear hierarchy, but as in any culture with an upper class, there is also a clear underclass. These unfortunates, the so-called Casteless, are believed to be descendants of criminals and other undesirables. They have been looked down upon since Orzammar's foundation. They have taken up residence in a place called Dust Town, a crumbling ruin on the fringe of Orzammar's common areas. Orzammar society considers these Casteless lower than even the servant caste. Indeed, the Casteless are not allowed to become servants, as it is too honorable a position. They are seen as little better than animals, their faces branded at birth to mark them as the bastard children of the kingdom. Their home district, little more than a slum, is a haven for crime, organized and otherwise. Orzammar's guards seemingly cannot be bothered to patrol its streets. The best that most casteless dwarves can hope for is a life at the whim of a local crime lord, ended abruptly by violence or an overabundance of toxic liquor ale. Even so, there is some hope for the casteless, a dangling rope that offers a way up into greater Orzammar society. Since a dwarf's caste is determined by the parent of the same sex, the male child of a nobleman is part of that noble's house and caste. Strangely, it is acceptable for casteless women to train in the arts of courtly romance to woo nobles and warriors. They are known as noble hunters. Any male born from such a union is considered a joyous event, considering the low rate of dwarven fertility. The mother and entire family are then taken in by the father's house, although they retain their caste. The dwarves we know on the surface are also considered casteless once they leave Orzammar, although this is only relevant to those who return, if they are allowed to return at all. Dwarves who leave for the surface, the sun-touched as they're often called behind their backs, lose their connection to the stone and the favor of the ancestors, and thus are worthy of little more than pity, for upon dying they are said to be lost to the stone forever. Put that way, it seems a sad existence indeed. From Stone Halls of the Dwarves by Brother Genitive, Chantry Scholar. The Proving, Valos Atreidim. In the 23rd year of the reign of King Ragnar Aeducan, an old man of the servant caste was accused of stealing a sapphire ring from his employer, Lord Dace. The servant was stripped of his position, he and his family thrown to the streets, and soon after, the servant died. The son of the disgraced servant challenged Lord Dace to a proving, declaring that his father had been the victim of a cruel injustice, and the ancestors would bear him witness. Lord Dace had no choice but to accept. On the sacred stone of the proving ground, the nobleman faced the servant boy. Lord Dace carried a sword crafted for his own hand, and was clad in his great-grandfather's armor. The servant boy had neither armor nor weapon. When the battle began, the boy fought like a whole pack of angry deepstalkers, flinging himself upon the startled lord, wrenching the sword from his hand and prying at his armor with bare fingers. The boy knocked Lord Dace to the ground and beat him until the Lord begged for mercy. The boy and his family were reinstated to their place in the Dace household, and the virtue of the boy's father was not questioned again. The ancestors had spoken, and no one would question their word, as told by Shape of Vortag. Bhelen Aeducan. This is a time for action, not cultured debate. Third of King Endrin's children, Bhelen has always been considered the last and least of his family. Not the heir nor the favorite, and not as accomplished as either sibling. Bhelen's most notable trait was his ability to stay out of trouble. King Endrin Aeducan. Denial of the traditions of our people does not qualify as a political technicality. Endrin of House Aeducan traces his ancestry back to the Paragon Aeducan, the greatest warrior of Orzammar's history, who beat back the Darkspawn hordes in the First Blight. The second son of King Ansgar Aeducan, he became heir after his elder brother died in approving. The most respected king in 4 generations, he restored contact with Kal Sharok, the only other remaining city of the once vast dwarven empire, which had been lost during the First Blight. Lord Pyral Harrowmont. No one is born with rights to the throne. The sitting king may recommend a successor, but the assembly ultimately decides who will rule. House Harrowmont is one of the oldest noble houses, as old as Orzammar itself. Endrin's most trusted advisor, Harrowmont is well known for being an able administrator, and the author of many compromises in the ever-warring assembly. And last but not least, we have one in items. Blood Ring. There are clear signs that this ring was made in the Tevinter Imperium. It's covered in dragon motifs, for one thing, and it gives anyone who wears it a slightly uneasy feeling for another. But beyond that, very little is known about it. Warriors of House Ivo took this ring in the Blessed Age from the hand of a madman, a surfacer mage who had wandered into the underground and attacked Illyrium miners near Orzammar. From there, the ring changed hands many times, until its history had been lost and the dwarves no longer remembered how it had ever come into their lands. And I believe that is us all caught up on the codexes to this point, so that is going to be a wrap for this episode, guys. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, leave a like and a comment. If you want to support the cause and help improve the channel, there is a tip link in the description below. Otherwise, stay tuned and I'll see you guys soon with more Dragon Age Origins. Take care, guys. Have a good day.